Hi, welcome to this video. In this video I'm going to explain on how we can create digital assets. Now a digital asset is actually something that allows you to create a very specific tool within Houdini. So if we look over here, we see all these kinds of nodes. Now you could look at these nodes as being a lot of functionality combined in itself. So if I take as an example, let's say the color node. So we see over here, I take a sphere object. We see right in here, if we connect this to the polygon mesh. Okay, so we see the sphere, we can color it. Now you have like several kind of options. You have like a color type which is constant. We can use bounding box. We can use random colors. We can use a ramping from an attribute. Can do random from an attribute, all these kind of things. So there's a lot of functionality we see over here. You can change over here to whether you want to have colors to primitives, etc. So if you do random on primitives, we see it over here. Random on vertices. This is also a possibility that you can have. So many options that you see. Now this node in itself is like a network. So if you double click on the color, this is an example of a digital asset. As we can see over here, everything is being set up in such a way that it can have like multiple functionalities. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to create something ourselves. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different kind of shape, which is clearly going to show or demonstrate the tool that we're going to build. So I take a torus over here, and let me add some more subdivision that we have something which will look a little bit nicer. Let's say this 225, more or less like this. And so we can take like a clip tool, and the tool that we're going to build is actually something which is going to be in part the functionality of a clip tool, but with some additional functionality to it. Now, you might have seen something like that before, especially if you've been working with 3ds Max. So the kind of tool that we want to build is something which is called in 3ds Max symmetry. Now symmetry is allowing you to clip, but also to mirror the shape immediately on its own as well. So you can create like a good modeling tool from it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create also like a mirror, and each one of these, it doesn't matter, it's actually the same thing. But this gives you like the opportunity to create something which can create a copy. Now in order to make it working, we see it already happening almost over here. We need to make sure that both of these are going to be exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some links towards the mirror. So the origin, the distance, and the direction, those are values that we're going to take exactly from over here. So one way to do it is to just write with the channel expression, which allows you to get like the value of the channel directly. So going to clip over here, and when I do a /, I can see right over here for the origin X, and I can copy and go to the next one and paste this over here, make this Y, go to the next one, paste it over here and make this Z. So what we have right now is an exact copy of the position. Can do this also for the distance. So again, channel clip 1, and let's type the D already. So we have distance to make it just a little bit easier and make it very fast. So distance is also done. All of these are linked. So if I'm going to move now the origin, as you can see, I'm moving it up, and you see the mirroring is already moving along with it. We see over here these values being adjusted. Now there's also an easier way. What you can do is also right click, for example, over here, copy the parameter and go down to the direction and paste it as copied relative references. So there we're gonna see it immediately has like a reference copy of this whole thing. So you don't need to type everything right here. So what we have right now is in here that we can easily change and adjust our shape and tool that we see over here. Good. some other things that I'm going to add is some different functionalities. For example, I'm going to add a switch node, which is going to allow us to make a choice between each one of these. So for example, if I take 0, I gonna have like the original result. If I take 1, I'm gonna get something like this. Now with the mirroring, I can also switch on or switch off consolidation of points, which gives you like a sharper edge. Perhaps might be useful. So these kind of things we're going to allow for. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this whole functionality, and the thing what you can do is you can put this whole functionality within a box. You can build it into a container. So one way is to creating subnets from selected, or by seeing the shortcut over here, pressing Shift C. So let me do this, press Shift C, and as you can see, everything is getting collapsed into this subnet. Now the next step what you can do is you can create from this a digital asset. So if you right click this box now, so when it's boxed, you can create over here, create digital asset. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it like an operator name. So the tool which I'm going to create is like symmetry, and just let me give it exactly the same name, perhaps by just having a smaller name over here, symmetry. And we can choose the number of inputs. Now if you have like a minimum input of 0, this means that you don't have like anything to connect to. Now in what cases could this be useful? Well, this is very useful if you're going to create like something that generates geometry on its own. For example, a temple generator could work perhaps without any input. Now in other cases you have like tools which are going to adjust something that's incoming. For example, in this case, we're going to have an incoming shape that's going to be clipped and adjusted. So we only need like one input, and also maximum of one input. We don't need to have like multiple inputs. So an example such as this would be the group node, in which you have like at least one input that you need and two inputs where the second one is an optional one. For example, if you want to create a selection of points by another shape. But we're going to keep these both to 1. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to my Houdini NHTV as an example over here, and I'm going to create a digital asset. Now since this is a 3ds Max modeling tool, the thing that I can do is create, for example, an OTL which is called Max Tools. Now what is an OTL? An OTL is in fact a library of various tools. So you can have like digital assets. This is one digital asset, and you can have like multiple digital assets being saved into this library, into this OTL. So therefore Max Tools is a good name as a library. So whenever I create like some more of these OTLs, I can all add them to that. So we'll accept this, and I will put it to scanned OTL directories and push accept. Okay, so now we have this whole thing to start with. Symmetry, icon, subnet, that's all fine. So this is the icon. You can create like a different image if you want to. These are the input settings. So that's something we can use as well. Here we have like a guide geometry. Now this is useful if you want to show, for example, the incoming geometry, what it was. So then you can see whether the node is still working, or if you don't see anything, where the actual geometry is. So the guide geometry, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to create for myself just a null node, so that I have a node which I can specify to be my guide geometry. So let's go up again, and what I'm going to do is over here connect it to the guide geometry. So let's go in the subnet, we see the null, and we accept this. So here you can see it. So if we apply this, now you see this appearing as guide geometry. So what would be the next step? Well, let me show you how it can work actually. So suppose that we have like such an offset that we don't see anything. So eventually you wouldn't know whether the node is working or not. Now with this guide geometry, you see the node is in fact working, but you see the settings are done in such a way that you don't see the actual result. So let's move this back so that we eventually see something going on. Up. I'm going to skip these elements over here. The dive target is a little bit going too far, so that's not necessary. These are like definite settings. Save initial contents and parameters, yes. Save spare parameters is switched off, so we can leave this as well. It's going to complain, so whenever you have like spare parameters added to the node, it's going to remove the spare parameters by itself. And check for external node references. So if you made like a reference within this node, which is still going outside something over here, it's going to complain about that, which is very useful because if that node wouldn't be there, then the whole system wouldn't work or has a risk of not working properly. Now let's go for the next one. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to create our own interface. We're going to add some things. Now one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to add one float for controlling the distance. So I'm going to give it exactly the same name. It's not necessary, but it's making it easier and more readable. So distance. And so now I create over here like this float value, which I can apply, which we see now appearing right over here on the interface. Now, if I double click on the node, what I can do again is make sure that we have like this distance connected. So if I do channel and I press 2 points, without having the forward slash, because setting the forward slash makes sure that it's going to look for the nodes inside. If I just keep it 2 points, it's going to look at the interface where these nodes are placed in. So in this case, I can find distance and I can close it like this. So right now, it's just literally following anything we do right over here. So this makes it very useful. Now we see we're limited over here. We can't move it beyond 0 or not easily. You can do it this way, but that's actually not that practical. We want to make sure that we can use it doing this handle. Now, where can you find this? We've been setting these things, the distance name and the label. Now if we go down right over here to range, and in the range you can set to whatever range that you like, and this is going to adjust over here the slider. So if I press now apply, you see the 0 is now set in the middle. So now I can just move easily to one or the other side. That doesn't matter really anymore. So that's one thing. Okay, so next thing that we're gonna do is let's go over here. The size, we can keep it as it is, because this is to do more if you want to have like multiple float values using this name. Callback script is also not important right now. Invisible, no. So we can go immediately further right over here. Yeah, perhaps one thing, if you want to know the name or the label, you see them over here. Now if you go over the name and you hover the node, you see automatically it's going to give you like the parameter and also the parameter's name. Now, there's also something else that you can add to this, and that is really useful, and I want to make sure that you apply this to your exam assignment, which is adding the help right over here. So if you check the help, the distance is going to create, for example, an offset value to the symmetry origin along the direction vector. Okay, so here I added some help. So when I apply right now and I hover over it, you'll see that also the help is suddenly being shown. And so this makes it very easy and useful for whoever is going to use the whole tool. So especially if you're going to work into a team, or if you want to have some people using a procedural tool within GameLab, there you can make sure that people are going to use it. Okay, so now let's go to some other parameters and let me add them in a different way. So One was the direction vector, so let me add this one over here with the float 3. So as you can see, float vector 3. Adding these three things right over here. So we can call this origin. Okay, so when we apply this, we see this one is being shown as well. So if you go to the channels, for example, that's also something we can do. We can create some links. Let's see how we can accomplish this. Now I'm not sure whether this is going to work, because what I want to do is to take the origin and drag and drop it over here. And so yes, as you can see, the origin is being dragged, and it's make like automatically the connections to each one of those channels. Now it's really important when you do this drag and drop that you drag and drop them exactly on this spot, not over here, but right over here, and then it can make the connection for you. So here we see now everything is being connected automatically using this. Now there's also a third method that you can use. For example, we're going to demonstrate this with the direction. So if we're inside this clip note, I can take the direction and just drag it in over here. So here we see how it's being added. We see immediately the naming, and it also adds the node name where it's coming from. So these are things that I'm going to remove because I don't want to see those, and I can just apply them. Now if you're going to go up, what you see is that the direction has like a default value of these. So this is something that I want to remove. I want to make sure that the direction default value is going to be something different. So we can go to our channels, and we can set all of these to, for example, 0, 0, 0. Now if I do this, it's not going to work, and think perhaps why would be the reason that this is not going to work. So when I apply this, suddenly we don't see anything anymore. So what went on? Actually, we had like a direction which is 0, 0, 0. A direction of 0, 0, 0 has no meaning. It really doesn't have like any direction at all. So by default, we're going to set this to 1, which gives it a direction, and like this we can see what's going on. So this is all fine. Now everything seems to work properly over here. You can change, I think, the direction over here to, let's say, instead of using direction vector, we're going to change it into a float tree, or into tree floats. That's also a possibility. So let me do this. Apply a float over here, and I'm going to copy and paste this a few times. So distance is right over here, direction, I'm gonna put it over here. So let's see how can we adjust this in a sensible way. So if we apply this right now, we see like three directions. So let me change the name, direction X, direction Y, and direction Z. So apply over here. And now we have like multiple of these directions. Now still again our sliders are not correctly set, so we want to adjust this. We want to make sure that we can go from -1 to 1. So everything between that is good enough for direction. So what we can do is you can always select multiple parameters, as you can see over here, and we can set over here -1 to 1. So it's going to adjust for all the parameters at the same time. Except for this one, I don't see what's going on right here because that range was switched off accidentally. Okay, so right now it's working. So let's check all these values. Now we see all of these do have some kind of connection, but we need to check right over here. And here we can see that this is not correct anymore. So I'm going to make sure that we have proper connections being set up again. So something like this. So once more, we need to go over here and make a proper default value so that if I apply it, that we still have something sensible. So now you can start to play. You You can say, for example, I want to adjust over here in one axis. And so you can play around with these sliders. So this gives you some flexibility. Now, what else can you do? We can add, for example, a toggle node or a switch. Let's create something to control our switch. And for that, I'm going to use over here the integer value, the integer which is going to give us like values from 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the name I'm going to give it is the menu. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter the name, but this makes it clear for you what to name it to. Now, what are we going to control? We're going to control the method. So what are we going to see? We're going to have either symmetry or we're going to have like clipping. So let's go over here to the switch node, and the switch node is going to be controlled by this channel. Let's see over here the menu. So what you can do right now is you can change over here the number and you see what's going on. Now in this case it might be easy because you have like 0 or 1, but especially in cases such as this, it might be useful to have something which really makes sense from a naming point of view as well. So if we go over here and we change this to menu, we can say it to use menu, and we're going to use some menu items. So over here, when I have like value 0, then the method that we're going to have is clipping. And if I go to value 1, the method we're going to have is like symmetry. Symmetry, like this. Okay, so now if we're going to apply this, we're going to see that this slider is going to disappear, and we're going to have like a much more convenient drop-down list, making it immediately clear on what we want to do. Now, let's say that we want to have something more of an organization over here, because we have some things. We have origin and distance, and these are about the space location. The direction is about orientation. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, let's say, 2 folders over here. And one folder is going to be used for positioning, and the other folder is going to be used for orientation. So we can rename those folders to, let's say, location, and the other one to direction. So if you would have like more things which can control direction or those things, we can use it right over here. So apply this, and we see right now a nice differentiation between those. Now there's also something else. Now the distance is perhaps something which you are not likely to use since or not that often are going to use. So we can add something to the interface over here, and especially if you have like more complex interface, it can become useful. We can make sure that some of these interface parts are going to be shown and other ones are not going to be shown. So if I go back to my parameters, we can set over here disable when or hide when. So if we're going to add, for example, a toggle over here, I can add a toggle which is going to call use dist. So use distance, like this. So now we see a toggle which is going to switch it on. We don't see the result over here yet, but what we're going to do right now is we go to the distance float value over here, and we're going to disable it when the use distance is equal to 0. So, and this is important, the kind of formatting you need to use over here are the curly brackets, and you just type in the name of the parameter you want to use, and then when this is equal to a certain value or bigger than a certain value, you can do something like this. So you apply it, and now the moment we switch this off, you see that our parameter is being grayed out, and this makes it much more convenient and much more readable as well to use this. Now again over here, I'm going to set my defaults right over here for the use distance set to 0 like this. So this makes more sense in this case. Right, so we've covered everything or a lot. No, not everything, just one thing. Suppose if you want to have like a different kind of organization, suppose we want to have like the use distance right in front of distance itself, which would make sense, which in fact, if you would have like multiple of these flags controlling something that you want to switch on or off, this might be useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that horizontally join to next parameter. So you have to do it on the parameter itself if you want to have like the other one being connected next to it. So we're going to switch this on. And now if you apply it, we see use distance and then distance coming right after it. So these are a little bit the methods that you can use to organize and create your interface tool. All right, so if I go a little bit further, we have the third tab, which is the help over here. So you can type some help. Now this is help. So apply. So if you go over here to this help document of the node, let's see if it's going to pop up. It's taking a while. But here we see suddenly that we've created some help for this node. So next thing is handles. Now handles is something very useful, especially if you want to make sure that we can control the whole set of the parameters over here using the same way as what we could do over here in the clip tool. This is something which is really practical, so I'm going to show this on how to access that. For example, if you go to create handles, we can create, for example, let's say a transform translate over here. So we see the translate and we can activate it by, for example, connecting it to the origin X, Y, and Z. So if you apply this, we can see right here, if you press the tool again, you need to switch between camera and the tool again. So now we see that we have like a location for this. Now we can continue doing this. Perhaps we can remove this one. We can also take another one. We can take, for example, the vector. Where is it? If you go down here, let me move this a little bit up. Vectors. It's just outside of the viewport, but here we see something more. So here we see the translation of that vector. Origin X, origin Y, origin Z, direction X, direction Y, and direction Z. So when we apply this right now, and again you have to do the same to give it an update. So now we see that we can have something that moves along. Now the problem is a little bit that the axes are always aligned to what we see right over here. So if we want to make it like really useful, that we can use it in an easy way, we can do something else. Okay, I have a phone, so let me pause this. Okay, so here I'm back again after a very nice phone talk. Okay, let's go over here to vector. Now what you've seen is that, like I said, that you have like limitations over here. So what I'm going to do is you can create, of course, combinations of those. So let's add a translate again, once more. And so we're going to make sure that we're going to use the origin and all these things being added together. So once I apply now this, we're going to see that we're going to get a combination of both of the systems. And right now I can move along this axis and I still have my vectors to rotate along. So you can continue doing this until you have like the complete setting. So we have over here the distance and we can have like the distance being added right over here. Distance. And so we're going to make sure that the position is also going to be again like origin X, Y, and Z, and that the vector is going to be direction X, Y, and Z. So now the whole family is complete. We can make sure that we have like the correct order. So you translate first, then vector, then distance, and we do an apply. So right now we switch this on and off again, and so now we have like exactly the same system. Now, is it working? No, it doesn't seem to be working right here. So this seems to work, but the offsetting is not working. It's because the use distance is switched off. So right now it does work, as you can see. Okay, so perfect. We have this thing working. Now code is something I'm going to leave behind. It's not important right now. Script is also something which is for a third year, perhaps useful, but not right now. Now here to tools, this is something which can be useful. So if we want to find actually our tool, you can find it in tab. You go to digital assets and you find over here symmetry. So you can immediately start to use it right away, which is all nice, exactly what we want to have. Now, what I do want to change is the following. I want to make sure that the symmetry is not going to be shown under digital assets, but that I have something on my own. So what we're going to do right here is we go not to scripts, not to help, but to context, what we see right over here. And so right now the tab submenu path is set to digital assets. There is where those things are going to be created. So I'm going to switch this into, for example, Kim, and then 3ds Max tools. Like over here. So when I apply it right now and I go looking for it, I can go over here. Kim, there's my subfolder. And because I have like a /, I created another folder in which I find the symmetry. So you can set up your own organization to do all of this. Okay, now let's go a little bit further. I have no need in changing anything on the inside anymore. So what I can do is no, I'm just going to leave it like this because I want to make sure that the edit operator is going to be applied to this. So we're going to leave it as it is right now. Don't worry. So selectors, we can leave it over here. And now the last one is input. Output is exactly something we need. We see over here the input label. Now if we click over here with the middle mouse button, you see input 1, the subnetwork input 1. Now over here you can also make something much more sensible. So you have like polygonal geometry to clip or symmetries, something like this. So once you do this, you middle mouse button click, you see right here what you need to attach. So again, this is all making it much more useful, much more helpful. Now, also something like over here, I want to make sure that all the help files are being added so that you make something which is very clear for everybody to read. Help file is always important. Now, extra files, I'm going to explain you what it is, but we're not going to apply it over here. It's perhaps a little bit too soon. But if you have like a digital asset and it's like something which is much more complex than a simple digital asset, something that involves, for example, geometry that contains textures, images, or other kind of files, you can add over here external files and you can embed those external files within the digital asset so that at all times if you're going to copy it and move it to somebody else that he has all the necessary data in order to work with this tool. So this is something that you could use as well. So this is covering everything for the digital assets, what you need to know for now. So, all right, this is going to be the end of the lecture, and I hope you enjoyed this as well. Ciao.